Hey there, A's Day fans. Welcome to our Tuesday edition of our show. I'm your host, Joe Grado. I want to thank each and every one of you for kicking off your week with us here at A's Day, hearing our thoughts on athletics baseball. Today is Tuesday, January 27th. We've got a little bit shorter of an episode, but nevertheless, a couple of topics to talk about. To kick off at the top of the show, the A's continue to add minor league depth to the organization as they are in agreement on a minors deal with an invitation to Major League Spring Training with catcher Chad Wallach. We'll discuss the details of that and what impact he may bring to the A's in 2026. And our main topic of discussion later on in the show, as we take a look at how 2026 this year potentially could have a domino effect on what direction this franchise is headed over the next 3 to 5 years, which includes a transition to their new home in Las Vegas. We've got a fun show today. We'll get some good conversations flowing and keeping our excitement high as the return of A's baseball is nearing ever so closer and closer. Holy Toledo, let's go A's. To our Tuesday edition of our show. Before we jump into today's episode, just want to give you a reminder of where you can enjoy all A's Day content. So continue to listen, download, and provide your support on wherever you like to listen to your audio podcast. Be sure to check us out, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify Music, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Podbean, so many more. If you just type in A's Day, you'll be able to find us and continue to grow with us as we near closer and closer to the beginning of a new season. And speaking of additional content, be sure to check out our social media channels on Instagram at A's Day Baseball Podcast, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at A's Day Baseball. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel for A's player interviews, A's Destination Baseball City virtual guides, as well as our video editions of our podcast episodes. There is so much more content to come in 2026. We're excited to share it with all of you, the lovely audience. And to become an official subscriber of A's Day, check out our Patreon site, patreon.com/A's Day for just $2 a month. You'll be entered to win monthly A's Day t-shirts, A's autograph memorabilia, future A's game tickets, and so much more as we are able to grow this platform collaboratively. All right, let's talk with the first topic on hand today. As I mentioned at the top of the show, that the A's have been rather quiet on the transactional front as of late, but they do continue to add to their minor league depth, as the A's are in agreement with veteran catcher Chad Wallach on a minor league contract. He is going to receive, as mentioned, a non-roster invitee to Major League Spring Training and most likely open the season at AAA Las Vegas. Wallach will be entering his age 34 season. He has spent most of the past 4 years with the Angels organization. He has been the third or fourth catcher on the depth chart. The Halos did call him up last September briefly while they were navigating injuries to Travis d'Arnaud and Logan O'Hoppe. Wallach played in one game and caught 2 innings in a loss in Seattle. The Angels outrighted him off the roster when O'Hoppe returned from injury. That is Wallach's only MLB experience since 2023. He has played in parts of 8 big league seasons, but only garnered semi-regular playing time 3 years back when he got into 65 games and tallied 172 plate appearances for the Angels. He's a 198, 268 on base, and a 430 slugging percentage line showing in AAA last year, splitting that time between the Angels and Texas Rangers systems. Shea Langoliers is set to play the majority of games behind the dish, as we all know, and Austin Wynns is set to back him up. There are currently only 2 catchers on the 40-man roster. Wallach is their most experienced non-roster option, joining Brian Serven and Brian Lavastida as organizational depth players who do have some major league experience. So it's good. Like I said, I think you can't have enough depth at the catching position because we know that, in my opinion, the catching is perhaps the toughest position, at least on the body. But I think overall, just because there's so much that goes into what the catcher has to provide the team on a day-to-day basis. They're involved in their own work in terms of their blocking, their catch and receive. Then they have to make sure they are familiar with every pitcher on the pitching staff, starter and reliever. So they're going to be in on daily pitchers meetings so that they know the proper pitch sequencing. They need to know how they're going to attack an opposing lineup. And that plan changes every single day because every pitcher has a different style. They have a different repertoire. And the lineups that these teams put out aren't necessarily as consistent as they once were. So even let's just say the A's are in a series with the Astros. Let's say it's over a 4-game series. Who knows? The Astros may send out 2-3 different lineups. And depending on one point of the year, it could be a different lineup every day. Just because, you get to those middle of the season games or even the dog days of summer. Sometimes guys need additional days off to make it to that finish line. So there's a lot of chances that changing in terms of that game plan to get that opposing lineup out is going to change even more so in the modern game than ever before. So a lot of that goes on the catcher's shoulders and, of course, the physical side of it in terms of them squatting down for every pitch, foul tips, blocking balls in the dirt. It's a very unforgiving physical position. So with all that being said, I think it's really important that the A's added here in some capacity. I think they're very strong at this position with Langoliers and Wins, without a doubt. But baseball can certainly be unpredictable and injuries can pop up out of nowhere. And obviously, if something were to happen to that position, it certainly would be rather dire. But now you do have at least a handful of guys that are going to be vying for a spot on the Major League roster in spring training, but are going to be residing most likely at AAA, so that you do have them getting those game repetitions, being ready in case they are needed at any point this season. So I think Chad Wallach kind of fits that description. I think he'll get a good showing. I think there is a chance that if the A's do carry 3 catchers, which I don't think that is the plan, that final spot would probably be between Servant and Wallach, if I had to guess. But most likely, I do think, as they did last year, for the majority of the year, I can't remember right now, A's fans comment. My memory is escaping me right now. I don't believe they broke camp with 2. I know they had 3 catchers at one point because Pareto was on the roster and then McIver. But the timelines kind of get a little fuzzy. But I think at least to kick off camp, especially with how the makeup of this team is this year and who's projected to be on their bench, I just don't see a world where they would use one of those extra bench spots on a catcher. But I think it's good to have someone with Major League experience ready at AAA in case you do need someone to come up, or perhaps Wins isn't as effective as he was last year. You do have some other options if you do need to have another look. So I think it's really important, too, that these catchers, again, like Wallach and Servant, that may spend a lot of their time in the minor leagues, but I think it's important that they get this invitation to Major League camp just in case they are summoned upon. They'll have at least some familiarity with this pitching staff. So if they are called upon, it won't be a complete start from scratch. I know the comfortability level won't necessarily have as many reps as with a Langoliers or a Wins, but I do think that little aspect there is important too as well. So looking forward to seeing. Best of luck to Chad Wallach. Hopefully spring goes as he projects. And Chad Wallach, if you're listening to this, would love to have you on A's Day and have our audience get to know you. Welcome to the A's organization and best of luck in 2026. All right, before we move along, we are going to talk about the domino effect of the 2026 season, perhaps. But before we get to that, this episode is brought to you by the Holiday Inn Sacramento Downtown Arena. Stay in the heart of downtown at Holiday Inn Sacramento Downtown Arena, ideally located near Old Sacramento Waterfront, Golden One Center, and Downtown Commons. Our full-service Sacramento hotel is just 15 minutes from Sacramento International Airport and within walking distance of the California State Capitol and Safe Credit Union Convention Center. Host meetings, conferences, and social events in our flexible boardrooms and ballrooms, supported by experienced on-site sales and events teams. Enjoy modern amenities, including a rooftop outdoor pool, on-site fitness center, and Cypress Grill restaurant serving breakfast, dinner, and cocktails. Guest rooms and suites feature comfortable workspaces, contemporary amenities, and city views, making them ideal for both short stays and extended visits. Whether you are attending an event, planning a meeting, or exploring Sacramento dining, entertainment, and cultural attractions, our downtown location keeps you close to it all. Downtown access, full-service comfort, easy booking. Stay at our downtown Sacramento hotel. All right, moving right along. So let's talk about my theory of this 2026 season being a pure definition of a domino effect. We're going to talk about some bullet points, why I think this is the case. We're going to talk about where the A's are at, where they've been, and where they're heading. So we are heading into a new year here in 2026. I think with just what they have done and what lies ahead, this is a very pivotal turning point on multiple different assets. And this is between what's going on between the lines and off of it too as well. So we are very familiar, especially if you are an A's fan or if you've been following along with us here at A's Day. We are all pretty clear that the A's have added wins to their total over the last 3 seasons. The expectation coming into this year with this top 10 offense, as they proved last year, which I think is going to be even more improved this year, and hopes of an improved pitching group, should have this team at least playing some meaningful September baseball. Coming off a 76-86 campaign, their notable adds this offseason have been Mark Leiter Jr., who will add some depth to the back end of the bullpen, and Jeff McNeil, which I think is the biggest fish they acquired via trade from the Mets. He's going to add a huge boost defensively, which is another area that the A's could see some drastic improvements. I think McNeil, with his veteran experience and how he really has a strong care for the baseball, I think that's going to be very infectious on this team. And if the A's can play even a little bit better defensively, I think they're going to find themselves in a lot more favorable outcomes of a lot of those 1 to 3 run deficit games. So looking forward to seeing what McNeil brings here defensively, but also offensively too as well, because he is one of the toughest hitters to strike out. And I think having that relentless bat in the lineup is also going to be infectious, because this was another area. Yes, the A's had tons of gaudy offensive numbers. They had one of the top averages, tons of home runs, very high run producers, but a couple areas where they could improve was in the walk department and the strikeout department. I don't think they walked enough, and I think they struck out too much. So while McNeil necessarily isn't the highest walk guy, he is definitely someone that is more of a high contact rate, and he is a little bit below average in terms of strikeout rate. So bringing that type of philosophy in to this young lineup, I think, is going to have such an abundant effect. And everything I've been hearing from McNeil in terms of some interviews he's done since joining the A's, I think it's going to be a beautiful fit. And really, he just has, it seems like, that the heart of a lion, heart of a champion, and just plays hard till that 27th out. And you can kind of see it from this team last year in terms of the A's, this young group doing that. I think with the playoff experience and just that winning attitude that McNeil is going to bring, I think this is going to be great in all facets for this young team. Very excited to see McNeil in the green and gold. Now, seeing that, they added a bullpen piece via free agency, and then they add Jeff McNeil via the trade, it seems like David Forst and this baseball operations department is operating with a lot more good fortune. And it seems like the Athletics' reputation in terms around the baseball world is slowly but surely improving. And I don't know if necessarily as rapidly with the players in this league as you would like, but definitely in terms of the front office executives and general managers, things like that. It seems like a lot of these teams are more open to doing business with the A's than even the last 3 to 5 years, let's just say. And I think just with this general manager, he's done a great job putting this good young core in place. It started last year with a couple internal core extensions, and then bringing in the Severino, landing a trade for Jeffrey Springs. Then fast forward to this year, landing that extension with Tyler Soderstrom as well, bringing in McNeil and Leiter. You're starting to see how this team is being constructed, and there's a lot to like. I still think there's improvement to come. I still think there's development that's to come. And obviously, one thing to worry about, like I mentioned, how the top 10 offense was really humming. There were a lot of young hitters in that lineup too as well. So now the book is out across the league about just so many plate appearances, which was good for their experience. But now these hitters are going to have to go into this year and adjust because the pitching staffs around the league are going to adjust. So that's something to keep your eye on. And typically with younger hitters, you do see some regression, but I don't think it's going to be dire enough because of the hitter-friendly environment that they have in Sutter Health Park. I think it's inevitable, especially once summer comes around, the ball really flies around that ballpark. But at the end of the day, I think this offense is just really talented. So even if there's a slight regression, I still think it's going to be productive when we look back at it at the end of the year. So with all that, another thing too, with how this team was humming, my one worry about where they're at is their depth as a pitching group. Because, we saw a lot of positive momentum at the second half of the year, especially out of that bullpen. There's a lot of question marks heading into this year. Who's going to be the closer? That's something we'll talk about during our spring training preview episode and perhaps team preview if it hasn't been decided. But that's definitely a positional battle that's going to go on in spring training, which should be very exciting because I think a lot of contenders are going to throw their hat in the ring. So I think that's an area of concern that I have. Plenty of guys stepped up post Mason Miller trade at July 31st, where they were the second best bullpen ERA-wise in all baseball, just behind Cleveland. So I think they could ride that positive momentum. A lot of that group is coming back this year. So you wonder if with that momentum, those guys can feed off one another and just keep putting up zeros or limiting the opposition and bridging that gap from starter to closer and closing out that W. So that's an area of mine. And then also to the pitching rotation side of things, there's a ton of upside, but there's also question marks. And it starts at the top, Luis Severino. He was great on the road, terrible at home. It was like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Which one are we going to get? And I think with Severino, he's going to be in his second full season with the A's. He's a veteran. He's a professional. He has proven to be relatively healthy since 2023 with the Mets. Or 2023 or 2024. During his duration with the Mets, he proved health, showed effectiveness. And then last year, it was a stronger second half, but definitely disappointing when you're bringing in someone like that to be your ace. Because of all the big game postseason experience, he didn't get out of the gate right, and there was a lot of communication in the media about his voicing his displeasure of pitching in Sutter Health Park, not being able to get into a normal routine based on the minor league conditions of the stadium as compared to what he was used to during his time with the Yankees and the Mets. So there was a learning curve there, and I think by season's end, especially when we returned from that short IL stint, you saw a little bit more of that Sevy that we thought we were getting, especially how things started in Seattle. He was absolutely lights out there, and he bookended it with one of his best starts, if not his best start, his final one. I think it was against Houston, if my memory serves me right. So hopefully he can build off that momentum of a pretty strong September heading into this year, having a much better understanding of getting a routine of pitching in Sutter Health Park, maybe working lower in the zone, maybe, changing up something. But I'm going to bet on Severino. I'm not saying he's going to have, he's not going to be prime Severino. I think those days may be behind him, but I think he could still be a much better pitcher than we saw last year. He ended up with right around a 4.5, 4.6 ERA. I could see him definitely lowering that to a 3.8, 3.9. I'm not saying that's necessarily the best outcome that you would want out of your ace, but definitely would be a huge step forward as compared to what we saw last year. But there's a question mark there. I think the ceiling's a bit high, but there could be some failure there too as well. I think that one can go either way. Jeffrey Springs was the model of consistency last year. I think he was their most consistent starting pitcher, especially once he got past those first inning struggles in May. I think it was almost pretty much smooth sailing from there. He was the picture of health, making 30 starts, which was really important to him, especially battling some injuries with the Rays toward the end of his tenure there. So I think it was really important to show baseball himself and the A's he's still a quality pitcher and he can stay healthy. So I think that would be my only concern for him. I think the effectiveness will be there. Just worried if he can have another full bill of health in 2026. But I think where I'm most excited, to be honest, is the back end of this rotation, because it's definitely on the younger side, which again leads me to some question marks. Are they going to be as effective as they were last year, or is there going to be some regression because they have some more tape out on them that hitters can adjust to? We will see. That's the beauty of this game. It is a game of adjustments. But the potential of Jacob Lopez, Luis Morales, and then a combination of whoever wins that fifth job, whether it's JT Ginn, Braden Nett, Gage Jump, Jack Perkins, maybe even Jamie Arnold throws his hat into the ring. I know there are reports out there saying that he is going to get an invitation to Major League Camp. I think if he blows people away and is absolutely dominant, I wouldn't completely rule it out. I mean, I believe he's throwing a professional pitch. So that would be something. I don't think teams like to – I know we're seeing more of a trend of these younger guys getting called up and not spending as much time in the minor leagues, but I don't imagine they would do that with a pitcher. I would expect Arnold to at least start the year in minors, and most likely I think he'll spend 2026 in the minor leagues unless he's just absolutely dominant. Like just every level that he gets, that he stands out, he's untouchable. Then maybe we see him later on in the summer. But I think this is going to be a great experience for him to get his first taste of Major League Spring Training, getting familiar with guys in the Major League Club, because those are going to be his teammates. I would say at this point, the latest, he would be on the team next year. Just again, seeing the trend of how these younger guys are getting pushed further. But I think they would want Arnold to have a year of professional experience before making that jump. And if it's as good as advertised, then he'll ascend rather quickly. But that's something to keep an eye on. I think that's another note for spring training that Arnold will be at Major League Camp. So if you're down there, be sure to check him out and let us know what you think. But yeah, so there's definitely plenty of uncertainty there with the starting rotation in the bullpen. But again, there's also a lot of upside here. This team is bringing back a lot of the players that were on this roster last year, which I think is a good thing. The way they finished last year, in their last 64 games, they went 35-29. That's good momentum in itself right there. I know it's a new year, but if you look back on years past, you see certain teams that finish that strong in the second half typically will have a pretty good or an improved year or perhaps a hot start the next year. So let's see if that trend continues here with the A's. I think they're going to have to pitch it well. They're going to have to play defense and just support this offense that's going to be able to put up 5 runs without even thinking. If they can play fundamental baseball, pitch it, I would even say right around league average. I'm not even asking for much. That's how low in the rankings this pitching staff was last year, that if they can even get to like that 15th, 16th best pitching staff in all baseball, which would be, I think, an improvement of 10, 11 slots, which we've seen before, I think this team could be in a prime position with what I'm envisioning this offense being this year. The A's are going to be right there in the mix in September. Don't be surprised, because I think the stigma of the A's just hasn't escaped yet. You know, with all these reports, especially like another one recently with Nolan Arenado saying he didn't want to play with the A's. There have been other free agents or guys not willing to waive their no-trade clause to go to the A's, like a Ketel Marte. But I do think that once we see a continued improvement and starting to see them prove that, hey, we are here, we've arrived, that you see they're getting closer and closer and closer. I mean, you can even hear how excited Jeff McNeil is to join a young group like this that has so much talent. And, you know, if they can just do the fundamentals and connect at bats like they did last year when things were going great and pitch it just even league average, that's not asking much. Pitching, I know it's hard because I know Sutter Health Park isn't necessarily a pitcher-friendly park at all. Experiencing games there, the ball flight is truly different, especially because there isn't an upper deck. There's just 2 levels there. So I think without that third deck knocking down the wind, once it gets to a certain apex in the air, it just seems like those major league flies are even higher. It's something to watch. If you haven't been able to see the A's in Sutter Health Park yet, be sure to check them out this year as they are preparing for year 2 in West Sac, because it's a nice friendly environment. It's a smaller venue, obviously only seating about 10 to 12,000, but you feel like you're right there and you got a good view at any part of the park. So just wanted to throw that out there. I think here where they're at in the off season, I like where the offense is at. If they really want to continue pushing forward, I think add another piece in the bullpen. And even at this point, this late in free agency, there are a couple options out there that if they truly want it, they can go out there and get a starting pitcher. There's a Framber Valdez still out there who's very familiar with the AL West with his time in Houston. I know there's some mixed messages there based on, you know, a couple of occurrences that happened last year. But sometimes going to a new environment can be a clean slate. And if Valdez shows up and is a professional, you're getting an ace, without a doubt. And with at this point in free agency, so close to spring training, and teams not really vying for Valdez's service as he's had imagined, wouldn't be surprised if the A's could even sneak in and get him on a prove-it deal. 1 year proves that he's still, in effect, a very good pitcher, but he can also be a good teammate. So I think wouldn't be necessarily the worst in the world. He is a sinker bowler pitcher, so I think that bodes well for Sutter Health Park too as well. I don't think I'd throw the bag at him, and I don't think I would do a long-term contract with Valdez this year. But doing a 1 year prove-it deal, why not? I think he'll boost your starting pitching rotation, and it'll make this team a legitimate contender. And don't tell me he wouldn't have those Astros games circled on his calendar. We'd be treated, I really think, to some good starts out of Valdez. And then you also have Zach Gallen. I'm not as high on him just because of the fit. He's more of a fly ball pitcher. He is coming off his worst year as a professional too as well, so I don't think there would be as much of a fit there. But again, that's another guy that does have a pretty strong resume, and not that long ago was a National League Cy Young candidate. The velocity is still there. The strikeout stuff was a little down. But I do think there is a chance that Gallen just chalks up 2025 as a year that just did not go his way. That happens to even the best of the professionals. And again, I wouldn't hate at least bringing in Gallen on a 1 year deal, see what he can do. Right? I mean, with his pedigree, if he taps back into the old Gallen, you're getting a really good one at a very team-friendly value. And if not, cut ties with him after the year. No harm, no foul. And then bullpen-wise, would love them still to try to land someone with some closing experience. I know at this point, free agency seems to be all dried up there. I think a lot of guys have already found new homes, but maybe land a trade. Or maybe at this point they're just very confident in who they're going to have internally, that someone is going to emerge and be that steady force to get to out 27. So we'll see. Very intrigued by this A's team this year. I think there is a huge window of opportunity, in my opinion, because I don't think the division, it's going to be competitive. I don't really know what the Angels have done. They've done a lot of one-year prove-it deals. So I don't know really. I mean, if those work out, maybe the Angels are more competitive. They seem to still be in a time of transition. Houston, they make their additions with getting Imai from Japan, but they are losing Valdez, and that offense is aging a little bit. Alvarez coming off a year where he barely played, so you wonder if he'll have a bounce back. Is Altuve going to still be productive? What are they going to get out of Jeremy Pena? He had an all-star type campaign last year. Is he going to rebound and do that again? Or are we going to see some regression with the offense there? There are a lot of question marks around the Astros, and they are, they just missed out on the postseason last year, but, the Astros are going to Astro, and they'll be right there at the end of it, at least playing some meaningful September baseball, so would never write them off. And then Seattle, to me, I think that's good. This is their division to lose, in my opinion. They returned the majority of their core. There still is the possibility they bring back Eugenio. I don't know. There haven't been a lot of reports around that. But aside from that, I think the Mariners have the best rotation, at least in the American League. They're all coming back, and they have a strong bullpen, and they went on that deep postseason run last year. You got to bet that city and that team is going to be hungry to get back there and one step further into the World Series. So it's going to be a very tight race, I feel like, at the top. Like I said, I'm not buying the Angels. If they prove me wrong, so be it. But in terms of the top, I see Seattle. I see Houston. I see the A's not that far off. Maybe Seattle wins around 90, 91 games. Houston maybe 86, 87 games. I got the A's being at least in that discussion of mid to like 83 to 86 wins. Is that crazy to say? I mean, we've seen teams have bigger turnarounds before. I mean, we saw the Toronto Blue Jays add 20 wins to their win total. I know that's an anomaly. That doesn't happen often. But if a team can add 20 wins to their total, why can't a team add 10? 9 or 10, 85, 86 wins, and then we'll see where all the chips may lay. This is my prediction, at least for now. We're not going to give away all of our predictions just because that's going to be for a future episode of our team preview in March. But if I had to write now on how these teams are constructed, I would say that the A's are going, like I mentioned, they are going to be playing meaningful September baseball. And I do believe that they are going to do just enough to get into the postseason dance. And I know that's going to be tough, especially with how loaded the American League East seems like it's going to be. But I do think, I don't know necessarily, there's a lot of question marks in the AL Central. So who knows how it all shakes out. If the AL East is as competitive as it looks like, maybe they all beat up on each other in those divisional games, making the possibility of having two teams out of the American League West a possibility. It's hard to say right now. I feel like that they could be right there neck and neck with Houston, in my opinion. They won the season series against them last year, and I think the A's, with that year of experience, I think are going to take a couple steps forward. I'm not expecting them to go on a deep postseason run or anything like that, but I think just seeing that progression would be very helpful, obviously for the players, but the fan base too, to have an understanding where this team's going. Kind of in this year of transition where, they're in a temporary home and eventually they're going to be moving on to Vegas. But you want to start building those pillars and foundations. You have these core players that you're locking up on extensions. You're bringing in some key pieces to bolster the lineup, bolster the back end of the bullpen. You need to keep adding on. And to be able to keep getting higher quality players in terms of free agency and trades, in order to have people want to come here, you have to start winning games. So I think if they can put on a winning product, at least a winning season, even if they just miss out on the playoffs or, they play some meaningful September baseball but just miss out and they end up 83, 84 wins, a winning record, something like that, I think that's going to speak more volumes than you're thinking at this point. And I think the A's reputation is going to continue to grow. And I think at the end of the day, they'll be 1 year closer to moving to Las Vegas. And hopefully at that point, if that is still the plan, that, by free agency next year, December 2026, prepping for the 2027 season, hopefully you have a lot more players saying, all right, well, we'll be in Sacramento for one more year, but then it's on to Vegas, because Vegas does seem to be a destination place, and I think would be, I guess more desirable than Sacramento. I enjoyed my time in both cities, so I'm not going to put too much personal input there. But I think in terms of venue, obviously, if they move to Vegas, they're getting a brand new stadium. It looks great in terms of the virtual graphics and the 3D models. So we'll see what that finished product looks like. But once we see some definitive plans there, like even if they get approved for a trademark, starting to see when they start having some advertisements and for Las Vegas season tickets, all that stuff. Once you see definitive plans in place, I think there's going to be more trust around the league, and players are going to want to play for this organization because of what they've put on the field between the lines. But then also, they now have definitive plans so that these players know, okay, this is where my future is going to be with my family or for them personally, whatever their situation may be. So that's why I think this year is such a domino effect. Middle of a transitional period of a home place. If you regress, it's going to take you a little bit longer to appeal to the masses. Then you're going to have some internal questions as well. Was last year a mirage? And was this regression just a step back this year? And then will there be a rebound in 2027? So that's why I really do feel like 2026 is a pivotal moment for so many aspects. And all signs to me, at least between the lines, I can't speak for what's going on in Vegas or the public perception around the league in terms of the A's. That, follow along in the news graphics, and we'll be able to update you here. But I will tell you that is still something that's a work in progress in terms of building their positive reputation around the league. But with what they're going to be putting out on the field in 2026, it's going to be a competitive product. Let's just see how competitive it truly will be. Very excited as A's baseball is one day closer as we are getting closer to the sights and sounds of spring training. It's the sounds of new beginnings, new hopes. And I think those new hopes, there are tons and plentiful for this young A's team. And with that brings us to the end of another edition of A's Day. Appreciate each and every one of you stopping by to kick off your week with us to hear our thoughts on everything going on in current events with the Athletics. On today's show, we talked about Chad Wallach signing a minor league deal with an invitation to Major League Camp, what impact he may have on the 2026 season. And then we just got finished talking about the 2026 season being a potential domino effect. And we just went on discussing various bullet points as to why and where we feel like this team is headed for 2026 and beyond. We'll be back behind the mic for Friday's show, as we'll update you on any transactions that go on between now and Friday's show. Like I said, it's been rather quiet. Maybe we get an internal extension out of somewhere. Maybe they sign a bullpen piece. Maybe they sign one of these starting pitcher arms. We'll see. We'll hop on the mic Friday talking about any moves that do go down. And then we'll continue on with this week's edition of This Player in A's History. We're going to kick it back to the 2010s. That's all I have for you today. Appreciate you stopping by. Appreciate all of your support. We would not be here as A's Day without you, the lovely audience. We appreciate all of your support. Hope you all have a great week, and we hope we have a ton more news go on this week so we can add on to our topics of discussion for Friday's show. Once again, I'm your host, Joe Grado. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you back behind the mic real soon. Holy Toledo, let's go A's.